Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto manga review. This one's going to be for chapter 68, which is called Scar. So overall, I thought this was actually a really good chapter. It definitely surprised me with the fact that they did choose to go straight for the keep the pacing fast, have code attack like straight away. I really did think, and I discussed it a lot in my prediction video last week, that I thought they would take the opportunity to really slow things down at this point, have some more dialogue focused chapters, and just spend a chapter or two addressing where do we stand with Boruto, where do we stand with Kawaki in the aftermath of this. And they still do that, they still bring up those plot threads in this chapter, but while also doing the more action-packed, keeping the main plot going, which I really appreciate. I like they're keeping the pace high, the action up, because I do think you ran the risk of having Code really peter out as a villain if you didn't have him act soon. So really good stuff there, and there's just in general a couple of surprises throughout this chapter that I think work really well, like reintroducing Sasuke after a bunch of chapters having not seen him. Shikamaru actually getting a chance to shine a little bit and not just be reactive to everything, but actually coming up with a plan himself. That was a nice thing to see, and that you almost forget Shikamaru's the plan, the genius character, because we haven't seen him execute a plan properly in a bit. So that was all good. There's so many little character setup moments throughout this that I think make it honestly a really strong chapter. Does it have the moments that are big enough to make it one of the absolute best chapters? Perhaps not, but for this sort of, we're getting things going again, with, I suppose, what exactly is going to happen with Code and the limiter and Ada and everything. This was really strong as a sort of, you thought we were slowing things down, but we're jumping straight back into it. So really good stuff. Cover page, color cover page here is Boruto, and we get to see the, I suppose, scar of the title on his chest. The chapter doesn't really address it being a scar as such, other than that I guess it is just permanent. There's no like Otsutsuki activation thing here. It is just that he does have that kind of black sort of triangular shape on his chest, as that is where I suppose the 18% had to fill in part of his body or whatever. That is the thing that I suppose is a visual reminder to you that he is not human anymore. He is Otsutsuki. So I do like that there is that with Boruto. It's not just the karma mark that shows the sort of Otsutsuki connection. He does also have that black mark on his chest that sort of signifies that he is an Otsutsuki. So all that is good. Let's get into going through the chapter sort of page by page here and discussing as we go. So we open up with a Katasuke, Sai, and Amado scene where they're basically just asking Boruto some questions. I guess they've just done a bit of a medical checkup on him. The story has just been told. They're shocked that like, oh, you were resurrected using the karma mark. We get the whole 82%, 18% dynamic that we learned about last time out as well. And Katasuke as a scientist kind of thinks this through, and it's just like, well, I guess if the Otsutsuki are able to digitize themselves for how the karma works in the first place, it's not too much of a stretch what you just said happened, and that's fine. Amado similarly is kind of thinking that like, yeah, I guess Momoshiki would do something like this, because if Boruto died, Momoshiki would be gone for good, so he has to keep his vessel alive to keep himself in the game like somehow. So that's all fine, that's all good. So then we get up to the idea of like, okay, so this means that he doesn't have the data necessary to resurrect. He'll never be able to resurrect again, right? And Amado's like, so it seems. A silver lining, you could say. However, the problem of him taking over Boruto's consciousness from time to time still remains. We still don't have an outright solution for that. Now, later on in the chapter, they do 100% confirm that it is impossible for Momoshiki to resurrect through Boruto. So I am taking that as just the series is flat out saying Don't even speculate that Momoshiki could find some clever way to resurrect again. He is... that plot is gone. Momoshiki is still a character in the story because he will still be able to, I suppose, communicate with Boruto and potentially still have those Borushiki moments happen. But the idea that Boruto will die at the expense of Momoshiki, get that out of your head. I like that clarification. They avoid that just being an ongoing speculation point for nothing. So Katasuke brings up the medication. Maybe the medication will stop this from happening. Boruto says, I don't need them anymore. How to put it? I feel like something has changed from before. It's hard to describe, but I have this feeling that I can channel his power better now. Now, they don't really go more into that here in terms of properly explaining what that is, but I think what they're getting across is just that Boruto is more powerful now, that it will be harder for Momoshiki to take over him, because Boruto, I suppose, effectively has a higher percentage, like, possession of those powers now. The Borushiki stuff is still possible, but he doesn't need to take medication to stop it from happening on a sort of day-to-day basis. So I like the clarification on this, of like, it keeps Momoshiki in the story, but stops the immediate threat that, like, Boruto is a ticking time bomb. Next, we cut over to Kawaki, unconscious in bed. The Shikamaru and Co have brought him to Sumire instead of Amado because they're still worried about the fact that Amado gave Kawaki the karma mark without telling anyone. So they're bringing him to someone that they trust. Just the explanation that his body, his nanomachines have healed him, and he will be fine. They then bring up the idea that, okay, like, why haven't we, like, bound him or something like that? If we're suspicious of him, should we not, like, imprison him in some way? But Shikamaru points out the fact that, yes, like I've been saying for a bunch of chapters now, Kawaki is effectively the most powerful character in the series right now. Even if we wanted to bind him, we probably couldn't. And we don't want to annoy him and get him against the village because he is so powerful. Thankfully, Naruto is safe. That is the thing he seems to care about above all else. So once we can keep that a thing, Kawaki will be on our side and he should be fine, and we should be able to have a certain amount of control over him. Naruto says, and I like the way Naruto is sort of portrayed here. It's interesting. He's clearly deep in thought, and you'd expect him to maybe have a little bit of a different approach based on what he said about Kawaki last chapter, but I think some of the words Shikamaru has said to him have got through, and that he is thinking about Kawaki's actions and the nature of how Kawaki did what he did. Shikamaru asked him, so you're okay with it, Naruto? And he says, yeah, we'll have a nice long talk when he wakes up. And Sumire notices the kind of slightly darker look on Naruto's face about this, that he's not overly happy. And she asks Shikamaru about it, but he sort of just brushes off her concerns as like, he narrowly escaped death, he's just tired. So he doesn't give her the proper answer. But the idea here is that Naruto, in reflection, is thinking about how, I suppose, how almost easy and in a way a little bit emotionless it was for Kawaki to do what he did. Naruto can accept the logic of the situation, that Boruto going out of control under the control of Momoshiki needed to be stopped. But it's, I suppose, the nature of how easy it was for Kawaki to do it, like, as a member of his family and so on. The idea that they're really leading you down the road of Kawaki is not just like he really cares about Naruto, it's getting to the point of like obsession, like attachment to Naruto that is like kind of unhealthy at the expense of all else. And that's, I think, where a lot of the concern is coming into play. That they are getting worried that if they can't, get Kawaki back on track, they might not be able to control him if something does go kind of slightly wrong. Next, Sasuke appears for the first time in a while. I think I've been predicting like nearly every chapter of the Code fight scene that Sasuke would show up. But they basically explain here that he was off tracking, I suppose, where Code had been moving before he arrived on that battlefield. And they seem to just flat out confirm that he found the headquarters where Code and everyone else is sort of staying. It's on the edge of the land of snow, in an area considered taboo even by the locals. They engaged in inhumane rituals, experimentation. Of particular interest is also that it was also a facility for the disposing of cyborgs that Jigen had ordered to be scrapped. Any conclusive evidence that Code is there? Nothing definitive, but a man named Bug is there. So Bug is with them, and they confirmed that, I think, in like the next chapter, that Bug is there. So Sasuke found their headquarters, as far as I'm aware, and either just was there at a time when Code either was already on the battlefield, that we saw, or missed Code, and then Ada kept herself out of the way. Demon kept themselves out of the way, because he doesn't seem to know about those two. So that's the interesting thing here, is like, how did this happen? Obviously, Ada is able to sort of see everything, so she could see him coming, keep to the shadows, and sort of just present the idea of like, okay, Sasuke's discovered our base, but if it's just this like one random Kara member who's not powerful, he'll just ignore it as maybe like a potential base. I'm guessing that's some of the logic here. Shikamaru and Sasuke do talk about what Kawaki did. Just pointing out, yeah, he killed Boruto. Even if it was to stop Momoshiki, he did it right in front of me and Naruto. So that maybe could have been worded a little bit better to get across more of the idea of like why they really consider it a problem. Like, so it would have been fine if he didn't do it in front of you? Like, what? I don't think that's what's being said there, but again, I think the wording could have been better. The only other ones who know about what has happened are Ino, Sai, Amado, and Katasuke. We're still deciding on how to move forward. Boruto is currently with his friends, including Sarada. You should go to see them. Cool. We cut then back to headquarters, where Bug, Demon, Code, and Ada are. And this is what seemingly confirms that it is, I think, meant to be the same location. There's snow, there's the same sort of kind of mountain kind of facility there. So Sasuke knows where their base is, and I think that is important. It's just, is he going to fully connect the idea that Bug is there as like, yes, this is their base that they are using. So we'll see about that. So Ada basically just catches Code up on everything that's happened, that, oh yeah, you'll be happy to know Boruto's actually alive. His karma healed him effectively. And she then just goes on to explain that somehow they, as in Boruto and Momoshiki, shared an exchange that I can't see directly with my Senrigan clairvoyance. I wonder if he's able to communicate with Momoshiki on some sort of a spiritual plane. And I read through this a few times trying to figure it out, but my understanding of this is that she has the information because she listened to the scene that happened earlier on in this chapter with Boruto talking to Amado and Katasuke. That's why she has the information to relay to Code. She was not able to see the exchange that Boruto and Momoshiki had, but saw Boruto relaying that information later, and that's how she knows about it. So it is interesting that her clairvoyance isn't able to see that connection. And it's also, I think, one of the first times we're really getting this mention of, a spiritual plane type thing. Doubt it will be super important, but just interesting to bring up that sort of technicality. This is where Ada sort of, I suppose, lays down the law with Code and really points out the idea that I'm not particularly happy with the way you're conducting yourself. A lot of grandstanding from you. You use Demon in the battle without my permission. All I want from you is to bring Kawaki to me. I'll help you regain your power to aid your goals. But right now, it's not looking too great for you. And if you don't look great, basically, when you get your powers back, me and Demon will have no problem getting rid of you. So she's really laying down the idea that, like, if you don't sort of shape up as being sort of the leader of this little group, we'll be happy to take over. So that's interesting. Code then brings up that, like, I've already put measures in place to ensure that, like, I get my limiters removed. So this turns the chapter's attention to the idea that Shikamaru has a claw mark on... Code has a claw mark on Shikamaru. This is how he's going to gain access to the village. He just needs to get the timing right. So we cut over to just the scene, just the timing that Code wants. Shikamaru is going to see Amado on his own. So we get the result of Boruto's blood analysis, which is that everything Boruto said is true. Can we definitively say he can't resurrect anymore? Yeah, it's 100% impossible. So this is the scene I mentioned earlier on. They are completely getting that out of the way. You don't need to worry about the resurrection. They did the same thing with sort of Ishiki's final death, really heavily doubling down on the idea. He is dead. We're not trying to trick you here. He's dead. We mean it. So I like that. So Shikamaru gets angry at Amado here and brings up the obvious point. What's the deal with you giving Kawaki his karma back? What was that about? We do cut away though to the Sarada Mitsuki scene with Boruto. They're also looking at his new sort of scar tattoo thing. And this is where they basically just bring up the idea of like, oh, Boruto's not allowed to tell them that Kawaki was the one who like nearly killed him. The story that he has to tell to them is that Code nearly killed him. Mitsuki obviously points out the logic, the bad logic there of like, Code needs you for his plan. Why would he try to kill you and like nearly do it? So Shikamaru told Boruto not to say anything about what happened, of course. And Boruto just says, Code can't control himself or something like that. So Sarada points out the situation that you're going to be targeted now because you're a full Otsutsuki. You need to be careful. What if you're attacked by yourself? Sasuke arrives on the scene and agrees with Sarada that don't go anywhere alone, even within the village, though I'm one to talk. And he just points out the logic of that Code needs to get his limiters removed, which likely means his first target actually will be Amado rather than Boruto. So they sort of are alerted to the idea that we should probably watch out where Amado is, and it maybe gets across the idea they're on the right track to... They might be the first reinforcements to arrive on the scene, given what happens. So Amado explains in the coding back to this scene that effectively the reason he did it was that he could see in Kawaki that even though he hates the karma and is happy that it's gone and doesn't want it, that his desire for the power to protect Naruto was so much that he just gave it to him with the idea that the power would then activate at a time when he truly needed and desired power. And he's basically, ends justify the means here. The only reason we were able to survive and get through the situation is because I did what I did. Am I wrong? Now, interestingly, Shikamaru brings up the point. Don't dodge the question at hand. Setting aside the result, what you did was not for Konoha or Kawaki's benefit. If you ask me, you seem obsessed with Kawaki's karma itself. Why? Now, Code pops out at this point, interrupting this, and it is pointed out that this conversation is interrupted at an interesting point. Amado is about to say something here, because he's like, ... as in, I'm going to say something important. What's the deal here? Why is he interested specifically in Kawaki's karma? In that, it's not that he wants it himself. Is it something about just that power being in Kawaki, who is the vessel constructed to be the ultimate vessel, that means something? Does he have control over Kawaki because I suppose he made his body that way? Is that kind of how he views all this? But it doesn't really fit Amado. I don't think he's the sort of guy who wants to control things or rule the world or something like that. So there's more going on here than I think we think. Because obviously, like I said, Code pops out. Sorry to interrupt, but I didn't want to waste this prime opportunity. Ada, obviously, watching this is this conversation was just getting interesting, you fool. Code slams Shikamaru against the wall, grabs Amado, and is basically rescind the limiters on my power. He explains the process for this to happen is for all you need to do is to look into my eyes and say the command. Only takes seconds, right? And Amado confirms this is exactly the case. Ino is alerted to new chakra being in the village and is we'll send reinforcements to your position, Shikamaru. But he says, no, hold on. Just inform Naruto and the others. Don't send anyone in here yet. I don't want to provoke him into running off. Let me handle this. Just monitor it and wait for my signal. He shadow possesses Code. Code reveals I can still move my fingers, so Amado's still at risk. But he's this is the big moment here. You thought I wouldn't notice the claw mark on the back of my neck, that I'd fall for such a transparent trap. And Code's like, what? We then are alerted to the fact that the container that has the mystery cyborg character from a bunch of chapters ago is in the room, and it's sort of activating. Shikamaru says, it's showtime, wake up Bronco, and out pops Delta. So Shikamaru explains that this is a new model reprogrammed to be a battle asset that protects Konoha version of Delta. Your target is Code, he's an enemy, and she attacks. She seems to still have a personality, but is more allied with our characters this time round. She slams Code into the wall, and we're in a bit of a sort of standoff here. So, very interesting. I think this was the obvious thing. I think everyone more or less predicted that this was going to be the case. So, yeah, Delta's back in the story. I thought it was pretty obvious, but nice to see it finally like activated as a plot point here. Shikamaru explains the genius of his plan here. I guessed that if I approached Amado with few to no guards, you might show up. It'd be too good of an opportunity for an idiot like you to pass up on. Delta's like, I can't use my one-hit destructive beams. It'll do too much damage. Code reaches into one of his claw marks, and Shikamaru thinks he's going to escape, but actually, Code pulls Ada out, and so Ada is now here in Konoha in the room with everyone, and he's like, escape, quite the opposite, as she walks out. And everyone is shocked by this because it's most of our characters' first time like seeing Ada. Like Shikamaru doesn't know who she is. Delta has basically no reaction, but we don't know what the situation is regards to like her being reprogrammed. Amado is shocked though. It's the first time that we really see this idea of like, what's she doing here? Because I guess he thinks Ada's been destroyed or disposed of potentially. But we just get this, end moment of Amado saying Ada as if like it's really, really important here. Now, Ada being in the room here, what does this do? It obviously controls things more for Code because everyone should be basically now attracted to her. So she has a sort of control over more or less everyone in the room. But there are a few sort of caveats here. One is that I guess Amado probably has some sort of a thing where it doesn't work on him because he created her with this power or something like that. So it shouldn't work on him. There's also the potential idea that if Ada is actually sort of Amado's daughter, that it also doesn't work on her blood relatives as well. Delta, because she is so robotic, I suppose, more than most of the characters, it's like, should it work on her? But she is paused right in the middle of attacking here, but I think she's more holding Code against the wall. So will Delta be charmed? I guess probably. Shikamaru should be as well, because there should be no counter for Shikamaru. So this really should create a situation where Code has kind of complete control over the room. Because Amado is not a physical threat, but he is who they need. So this reverses Shikamaru's kind of reverse trap pretty much completely. Now, other people are going to be on the way, in that I guess Shikamaru will be able to tell Ino, tell everyone to pile in. And while we don't know for sure that, the scene with Sarada, Mitsuki, Boruto, and Sasuke, that meant that they were heading over to find Amado, they probably will be some of the first people to arrive on the scene. I'm thinking what they're going to do here is they will have, them escape with someone. Whether they take, like, say, Shikamaru hostage or they take Amado hostage, they will leave with someone here. And that's the significance of why they had the whole scene with Sasuke explaining how he knows where the base is. Because Code is going to realize that, they don't know where our base is, so we have all the time in the world to sort of interrogate Amado and get him to release my limiters. So it creates a bit of a timeline of like, will Amado crack under pressure, or will our heroes get there in time? And the like attack on Code's headquarters might be the big finale battle scene of this kind of sequence of episodes. Maybe. Because there's other things that are being set up here, like Kawaki waking up, when is that going to happen? Because they feel they need to have a conversation with him. But if he's woken up and is immediately required to fight Code, that creates a bit of an interesting dynamic because they now don't know how crazy or not the decisions he makes are going to be. Boruto and the control over the powers that he has, what's he going to be like in all of this? There's a few very, very interesting dynamics here. So they've also really heavily more brought up the idea that Amado actually has some secret plans, and what are they? I'm guessing they will get into a few things here with the idea that, of course, Ada doesn't like Amado because he is the one who gave her the powers that she sort of... All of her motivations are about sort of countering what her powers do, which is that her powers attract everyone to her. So she never knows when she has a proper relationship with someone because her powers force those relationships. And she kind of hates him because of that. Now, if we add on to that like maybe this is his daughter, that's like a whole other factor in here as well. That maybe to save her, he had to do this to her, and her personality is like completely different, but it is her. That would be cool. I think it's probably, it feels like I think it's around time to finally get towards the truth with Amado, because I'm a little tired of waiting. They've opened this tease a few times without actually doing anything, but something like this I think can absolutely work. So I like the situation we're in. Some big stuff happened, and I think it means we're going to have a very exciting volume. Next couple of chapters I think are going to be really, really good. Because I think that's probably what happens here. Will they have a fight in the village? Perhaps not. So I think the best thing for this is probably that it gets sort of like temporarily resolved here relatively quickly. A little bit of a cooldown as we set up the mission to go after them at Code's headquarters, and then build up to that as maybe the big sort of fight sequence, maybe before going into time skip, something like that. So yeah, I think that's everything I want to say so far about the chapter. I really liked it. In the comments, let me know what your guys' thoughts are on chapter 68 of Boruto. That's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.